Sampling method is the planning process to obtain a sample which is a subset of the population. There are many ways to plan a sample. We will cover the easiest way to get the sample and then we'll go over the good methods. One way to obtain the sample is to use the volunteer sample. For example, we visit an online website and we see that there is a poll next to an article that we're reading. This result is probably not reliable and we call it biased. It is because people with strong opinion are likely to participate in the survey. The result is for that subgroup of people with the strong opinion only. It does not represent the whole entire population. And so in this case, we cannot generalize it to any larger group. So for example, if Fox News conduct a poll online asking who should win the next presidential election, now most people who go to Fox News would have strong opinion about one candidate than another. And so again, we cannot generalize the result of this poll, of this volunteer sample, to a broader group. Another way to get the sample is using the convenience sampling. The convenience sampling is a sample that is convenient to the researcher. In this case, for example, we would stand at the corner of the street and ask people who walked by. This sample is not reliable because it depends on the people who are there at the right time and the right location. It does not represent the larger population. In getting the sample, we will need to be careful with the sampling frame, which is the list of the potential individual to be sampled. We need to make sure that this sampling frame represents the population. For example, if we want to find out how San Francisco's residents feel about homeless in their city, and we conduct a survey by asking students on campus only, now the result will be biased since the sampling frame in this case is the set of students at CCSF. It is the list of potential individuals in our sample. However, the population are the residents of San Francisco. And so one issue here is that by using this sampling frame, we exclude older people from our study if we only survey students at CCSF, and that result will not be reliable. With systematic sampling, we select key element in the population. So for example, we have a roster with all of the names of all of the people or all of the objects in the population, and we would pick every, in this case, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, any key element. Or we might pick every fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So every time we select every key element in the population, we call it the systematic sampling. A random sample is the sampling method in a way that every individual from the population has equal chance of getting picked. For example, if we have the population that is all of the students in our class only, then we just simply pick a name out of the hat, and that is random sample. Everybody has an equal chance of getting picked. Now, the sampling methods that involve some kind of randomness is called the probability sampling plan or the probability sampling methods. The gold standard of a sampling method is the simple random sample. Unlike the random sample where we pick the name from the hat, for the simple random sample or SRS, we would partition the population into many sample of the same size n. For example, if we decide to have the sample of size 23, then we would group all of these individuals in the population into many samples of size 23, or just simply size n in this case. It is sampling with replacement. What this means is that this individual that belongs to the previous group might be in another group or might be in another group, and so on. And so we have many samples of size n, and we randomly pick one sample from these many samples. This is what we call the simple random sample. Stratified sampling is the method to divide the population into at least two subgroups. For example, in this case, women and men. And then we draw a sample from each subgroup. And so in this case, we divide the population into women and men, and then we would pick a sample from each of the group. Cluster sampling is the way to divide the population into sections. So for example, we divide the county into many clusters, and then we randomly select some clusters only. So for example, we have 32 clusters here, and we randomly pick 5, 28, 16, 3 clusters. When we randomly select those clusters, we choose all individuals from each clusters. And so another example, if we divide or group the population of all of the students at CCSF into freshman, sophomore, junior, and then senior, then we end up with 4 sections or 4 clusters. With cluster sampling, we randomly pick a few from these clusters, and so we would randomly select 2 in this case, for example. When we select these 2, freshman and senior, we would include all students from freshman years and all seniors. We have to include all individuals in each selected cluster. And this method is called cluster sampling. Now, unlike stratified sampling, if we divide the population into 4 subgroups or 4 strata, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, if we were to use stratified sampling, then we would have to select all 4, not just 1, 2, or 3 of these clusters, but we have to select 4, and then we would randomly pick the individuals from each group, but not all of the freshmen. We only pick a few selected freshmen from the first group, a few individuals from the senior groups, a few individuals from junior group, few individuals from seniors group. Notice that in this case, all of the class standings, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, are included in our study, in our sample. However, not all freshmen are included. As opposed to cluster sampling, some of the class standing might not be included in our study. For in this case, sophomore and juniors are not included. However, all of the freshmen are included in our sample. In practice, researchers use multiple steps in sampling planning or technique. They might use simple random sample and then cluster, or they might use stratified and then simple random sample, and so on. This is what we call the multi-stage method.